Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've just come back from seeing King of Thieves, which is a heist movie, rather like American Animals we saw the other week, based on a real-life heist.
Yes.
This one in Britain. This is supposed to be the most expensive burglary in British history. Numbers vary, but it's around 200 to 300 million pounds worth of loot these guys stole from a vault in a sort of safe deposit building in Hatton Garden, I think, in London. Yeah, Hatton Garden in London in 2015.
Right.
It's now been made into a movie. Well, it's been made into a couple of kind of low budget things before this, and this is a kind of premium British movie.
All right, I didn't know it had been done before.
Yeah, it's one of those that like it gets adapted quite quickly because it's quite an exciting story. You know.
Yes.
I haven't seen either of the other adaptations.
Right.
But this is a kind of a big one with Michael Caine, Jim Broadbent, Tom Courtenay, Paul Whitehouse, Michael Gambon, Ray Winstone, and Charlie Cox as the youngster of the group.
Yes.
It was one of the things that comes up in the film is this idea that once the flying squad gets involved, they're saying we're looking for a really advanced gang of thieves here. These guys knew what they were doing, and so everyone's going, well, they can't be English then. But it turns out that actually not only are they English, they're pensioners. Englishness
is like a theme in the film.
Absolutely. My initial response is I like bits of it, but overall I don't think it's very good. I can tell you have some vitriol to it, I think.
Yes, I mean, I just hated it, really. I mean, I couldn't wait for it to be over.
Excuse me.
There were a few good jokes, and actually I think all the actors are very good because, you know, they really resist making these old codgers into lovable old codgers. They're actually quite nasty and quite funny, really. So I think, you know, praise to the actors. But I just thought the narration and the narrative and the way that it was filmed and the way that it was edited was just stupid.
There are issues. There are issues. I pointed out one or two to you during the film. Let's say, as far as spoiler territory goes, there's only so much you can spoil about a story that's kind of well known.
Yeah.
These guys did this robbery over a long Easter weekend, and then ultimately didn't get away with it, apart from one of them who no one's been able to find yet. But all the old fellas were caught and sentenced. So as far as spoilers go, like that is the true story. So we'll get into details of the film right away. I think the film had a load of charm early on. Basically, there's one joke in the film, which is that the guys are old. That's really it.
Yes.
But the film it does make that quite charming while the heist is being planned and while it's underway.
I didn't find it so charming. I mean, I could see that it was intending to be charming, but the charm didn't work on me.
There's certainly a level of homophobia the film indulges in that I don't like.
Throughout.
And it kind of, you question whether, you go, is the film making these guys homophobic to render them unlikable, or is it actually indulging in homophobia? I think it's doing a little too much of the latter, to be honest.
Yes.
It's not comfortable viewing.
It's indulging in a nostalgia for another Britain, for the way that England used to be.
Yeah, and being uncritical of it.
And being completely nostalgic for it, you know. And it goes from the use of the Tom Jones music to the Shirley Bassey. It's in love with its own past.
Yeah. It uses a lot of clips of from old movies, including old movies of the actors in this one.
Yes.
Which is kind of cute, I suppose, but it is, as you say, indulging in nostalgia and clips of old heists and things like that. That suggest that there's a reliving of the glory days kind of thing, as opposed to kind of saying, you know, these guys are old and this is why things are different. It's saying these guys are still these guys in a way. That's how it comes across to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd go that far. I mean, it does say they're different.
Well, these guys are trying to be these guys.
Yeah, I mean, they all have diabetes and hip replacements and whatever. So, you know, but they do say inside I feel the same, which, you know, I think everyone can empathize with, right?
I think they do that right at the end, when they've been caught and they all have to. They've all kind of broken up and the tensions have come up, and then once they're back together in prison, they talk about how they all feel young inside, and I think it's going for a soppiness in the ending that I didn't like.
Yes, I can understand the appeal of the actors, and I can even understand the appeal of the nostalgia. What I can't understand is the incompetence around, the expectations and pleasures of a heist film. So I think, showing us what's involved, how it will be carried out, showing us all of those things kind of clearly and making it glamorous, right? Like, what's exciting about these old guys reliving their robbery is, they must love the money and the loot, and there were like scenes where you have all these diamonds and pearls, you never even get a chance to look at them.
Yeah, it doesn't indulge in that really, and that's partly the fault of the editing, which, as I said to you, during the heist in particular, is so haywire that actually the kind of older audience that you feel this film is at least partially aimed at would have trouble accessing it. I was having trouble following it.
Yes. It's part of the cycle of films that is definitely aimed at retirees. It's part of the cycle of films like The Marigold Hotel and things like that, right? That it has that audience in mind. I think there's no question of that for me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even indulge in those pleasures, really. No. So, I mean, the main pleasure, and thus the use of the flashbacks, right, of the use of old films, is really, I suppose, for an audience to demarcate the way they've changed in relation to how these famous stars have also changed and aged and gotten old. There's quite a lot of showing them very vulnerable and naked, really, or semi-naked, right, to see the deterioration of their bodies, which I also think was unnecessary,
Unnecessary is probably the right word. Like, I didn't hate seeing that.
No.
But it probably overdoes it. I don't know.
It's a way of showing you, look how they've aged. That's the purpose of it, which I think is kind of disrespectful, actually. So I just didn't like it. I did think throughout the film that maybe it's addressing things that I'm not susceptible to, because I'm not English. And there is a lot around Englishness, around the Lavender Hill mob, around, get us a good cup of tea, around this is the way things used to be, and you remember this restaurant and this hotel, and they go to Margate, and, there's English flags flying on suburban lawns, and, there are all of those things. And maybe all of those things would work on an Englishman better than they worked on me. I just got nothing out of that, and all the rest of it irritated me.
Speaking as an English person, although not one who is of a similar age to these guys, I didn't feel particularly kind of roused by that. Like, I recognise, I guess, parts of it, but as you would have done as well. Like,
yes, I did.
But in terms of kind of rousing a sort of patriotic pride or something like that, I didn't really like. I mean, it fits into a lot of similar London-y, gangstery movies. I mean, it's absolutely sub Guy Ritchie. People are quite down on Guy Ritchie, but
I like Guy Ritchie.
I think the guy is a really decent director. For whatever kind of various faults he may have, imagine what he'd have done with this material. I
mean, at least he takes genre seriously and he makes it fun and he delights in it. This is incompetent.
It is incompetent. I mean, that's absolutely the word. It's directed by James Marsh, who we were just discussing. Let me just get up his details again. Of his films that I've seen, I didn't really get on with either. Well, Man on Wire is acclaimed and won the Oscar for Best Documentary, and I found it very middle of the road.
I've seen it.
It's one about wire walking between the Twin Towers.
Yeah, I've seen that. That was okay. I mean, I didn't
mind it.
It
was okay, but it wasn't particularly special. No. And it won the Oscar because it was about the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to say that now.
The theory of everything really, again, irritated me.
Theory of everything, yeah. That was so middle of the road, unimaginative, and again, people loved it.
Very plain. Though I think what's his name's performance, which was incredible, actually.
Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah. I think without him, I can't remember anything else about the movie except him, his performance.
The problem I had with Theory of Everything, just to go on about it for a second, was I don't think it made anything of what was really interesting about the story. What they make of the story is, isn't Stephen Hawking an amazing bloke, really? And aren't you interested in him? But what's so interesting is his wife. Because they get married when they're kind of 18, 19, 20 sort of age, because he says, I've got this degenerative disease and I'm going to die in 5 years' time maybe. So they passionately go, well, let's get married and let's live, it's a short life, but let's make it great. And then, of course, he doesn't die. And his life goes on and on and on. And what that does to her life and her expectations, the film makes nothing of. But I thought that would be a really interesting place to explore.
Yeah.
And that's the problem I had with the film, is it's this paucity of ambition in it, where it was really just about saying the things that you recognise about Stephen Hawking. You know, the fact that he wrote Brief History of Time, and he's very well known for it, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's got the electronic voice. That it was just about building that and making it a bit of a sappy story, and I thought it was so unimaginative, so unambitious.
Yes.
Going back to King of Thieves again, I don't want to be too down on it, in part because I laughed an awful lot at the first act, and going into the heist and during the heist. I think there were loads of jokes that I really enjoyed, and loads of little observations and bits of performance that I liked. I mean, there's one point where they're sitting around a table planning the heist, and Ray Winstone is sitting there reading Forensics for Dummies, which really made me laugh. It was so silly.
It did, though I hated Ray Winstone in it.
Yeah.
I think, he used to be such a great actor, and at a certain point, he became lovable. And in every film he's in, he plays the same kind of thing, right? Like a hard East End Cockney, charismatic, but everything he does in the film is a way of getting the audience to love him, and I think he ruins every character. And I thought his performance stood out very interestingly against Michael Caine, who is fantastic, and he normally is, actually, because he's funny, but also he brings real depth to the character. You see he's really suffering over, like, the loss of his wife, whom he really loved, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of he brings in all these layers to it, and he kind of gives you a character, and then kind of whether you like him is a different story. He makes him understandable in a kind of a complexity. Ray Winstone turns every character into a cartoon that you squeeze him in the gut, and he goes, "Love me," and I think it's one of his great faults recently, and he better get back to being an actor, because people aren't going to love him forever if he keeps doing shit like that.
There was, when you talk about as well, the idea of seeing the actors' physical degeneration or deterioration over the years. There's that one bit in particular where you see Tom Courtenay and Michael Gambon in a swimming pool, and you see that very saggy bodies, basically. And the film is kind of, you're right, it does feel a little bit unnecessary, but then on the other hand, there were shots of Michael Caine, who doesn't let himself be seen in such
smart.
a state. He's always dressed, but there are shots of him. It's his hair. You can sort of see through his hair a little bit. It's quite thin, and the way he holds himself. It's in his gesture and in his stance. It is a performance. It's not just the way he looks. It is a performance of age that is quite kind of heartrending in a way. Like, I mean, part of the thing is that he's lost his wife at the start of the film. I mean, we go back to talking about fridged women. There's a light kind of element in the film of he's just lost his wife and he needs something to occupy his time, and hence the heist happens. But
there is that.
But that opening at the funeral, where he's very protective of his wife's memory, and you see him just kind of shuffling about, and then at his home, and he talks about the silence. Nothing prepares you when you lose your wife of the silence of the house. There's really touching aspects to that. I particularly liked as well when it's at the funeral, Charlie Cox's character, the young fella, comes up to him and says, "I'm sorry for your loss. I only met her a couple of times, but she left a lasting impression."
Yeah.
I just thought that was such a sweet thing to say. Like, it really touched me very early on.
Yes.
The film has a kind of sensitivity, and I think that when the film loses its charm and the characters devolve into bickering and trying to snatch what they want and this kind of thing and breaking off into little groups, I think it's quite a deliberate thing that the film loses its charm, because it doesn't want to be charming then, but it is to its detriment because it's no longer fun.
Well, the thing is, that if it didn't want to be charming in one way, it had to be done in another. It had to be stylish.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, or show you the lure of the robbery or the lure of the things being stolen. It does nothing.
You don't really feel the magnitude of what they want.
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be millions and millions and millions of pounds worth of stuff, and all you actually feel is that they don't like each other, not that they want the stuff.
And you also feel that there's no tension around being caught.
Yeah.
So actually the bickering should always be in an interplay with the danger, right? And kind of there's none of that here. So I think you're being generous. I think this is the worst thing I've seen in a while, and I was just waiting for it to end.
I think it's overdoing it to say it's one of the worst things. I mean, I think we have seen worse things recently.
Like what?
Well, let me find. Let me...
Give a list.
Yeah, no, I shall. But I'm sure I can pick up one or two things which we would agree are worse than this. The Happy Time Murders.
That was the worst.
Is worse
That's
than
true.
this.
And that was.
Although that is not being especially generous to this.
Yes.
That was so awful.
That was so awful. But no, I think, this looks like a TV movie,
It's
actually.
pretty bad, yes.
And if it had been on TV, I would have turned it off after the first half hour. So that's how bad it was.
Well, I would have kept it on while it was fun, and then I would have turned it off when it got shit.
Well, so we agree. After the first half hour, you'd have turned it off.
It's longer than half an hour that it's fun for. Like I say, it's half. I mean, well, okay, I didn't time it, but like that heist, it's after the end of the heist that it all just dies.
For me, it's when the heist starts that the film dies.
Oh no, there's quite good fun during the heist. I mean, I said to you, like, I like the idea that the heist gets kind of rained off, like Wimbledon. Like, it's quite an English thing where I've never seen a heist they just go, okay, we're going home for the night, because they've got the long Easter weekend, so they say, and then when they're trying to break through when they get through the wall and they're trying to push over the one of the vaults to get into the next room, their ram breaks. And so they go, well, we're just going to have to call it a night and get a new ram. Which I thought, I've never seen anything like that, really. I mean, I'm sure there must be examples, but it was quite novel to say, well, we're just raining it off.
Well, they didn't do anything exciting with it.
No.
Anyway, I think we've wasted too much time on this film. It's a really poor film. I don't recommend it to anyone.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I thought American Animals was flawed, but this is like, I mean, they
American Animals is at another level of quality.
They both try and have that sort of Reservoir Dogs thing of, like, it's not so much the heist that's interesting, it's what happens after.
Well,
and
this one neither before, after, nor during. It's like a flop throughout.
I said just like sneak in for the first half and then leave after the heist.
All right. So thank you very much for listening.
Oh, one last thing. There was a great bit where the young lad's called Basil, and he just annoys everybody. They don't really like him, and so they're all having an argument in the heist. And then he tries to chirp in, and everyone goes, "Fuck off, Basil," in unison. And then some guy in the audience went, "Fuck off, Basil." I really like that.
It's that kind of film. That was the best laugh in it. All right. Thank you very much. We are eavesdropping at the movies. If you're listening, you know where to find us. If you liked it, share it.
Yeah, you're making it very succinct these days.
Yes. No more need be said.
Bye-bye.
Bye.